Welcome, sports fans, to another edition of Play It Right. This is Quinito Henson with Dyan, Castillejo, and everyone in the Philippine sports community over the past several days has been talking about only one major, very sensitive topic, and that's EJ Obiena and the Philippine Athletics Track and Field Association. The row, the rift, the quarrel between a star athlete who's now ranked world number 6, used to be number 5, but I'm sure with a lot more competitions, he's going to go up the ladder. And of course, the federation that grants sanction to athletes like EJ Obiena to participate, represent the Philippines in competitions like the Southeast Asian Games, the Asian Games, and the Olympics. We have with us, and we're very fortunate to have him with us, someone who knows a lot about EJ Obiena, someone who knows a lot about PATAFA, someone who knows a lot about Philippine sports. And Dyan, who is he? Tell us more and introduce our special guest.
Well, we're so happy to have with us joining us all the way from Dubai, somebody who's very familiar to the sports community here in the Philippines. But in case you may not know him, he is Jim Lafferty. Jim, welcome to Play It Right TV. Thank you for joining us and making the time. I wanted to ask you off the bat, just for the purpose of our viewers, tell us about yourself, your history with EJ, how you've known him, your relationship with PATAFA, and your relationship with so many of our Philippine national athletes.
Thank you for having me, Dyan and Quinito. It's a huge pleasure. I started my life, I'm a physiologist by training. I was hired by Procter & Gamble in the United States as a fitness instructor for executives 36 years ago. And through serendipity and a strange sequence of events, I went from working in the gym at P&G to becoming a CEO in P&G. And I eventually worked around the world in different roles in marketing and CEO. And then I was the CEO of P&G Philippines from 2006 to 2010. And during that time, whenever I worked in certain markets that I felt I could add value, I would go and recommend and say, look, I'm happy to help with especially track and field. I was a track and field coach in the US. I coached junior national team. I've coached a number of Olympic medal winners in the US. And so I got with Go Tangkok, right after London Olympics. I worked a bit with Maristella for the London Olympics. I was even met with her in London and helped her out when she was in the London Olympics. But it wasn't until she was pregnant and then she lost her spot on the national team. I met with Go Tangkok, who was handing over to Popoy Wiko at that time. And I said, let me take her on because she had lost all of her sponsorship. And so I trained her. Everyone had written her off. She was 35 years old with a baby and you're never going to make it. And we got her qualified and she actually set the new national record at 35 years old. And she went to Rio, and now Rio was tough and she didn't make the final, but she went and she was the only mother competing. And I'm very proud of her. And I always have huge emotion for Maristella, and I'm very proud of her. And she's training now for the SEA Games at 41 years old. And she's probably still to this day the number one long jumper in the country at 41. And I'm incredibly proud of her and her discipline. I also worked with EJ off and on. I bought him some poles and I helped. And I was always kind of there. And I had huge respect for Popoy Wiko and was always there to try to help in any way I could and bring corporate sponsors. I organized a team of sponsors to sponsor Eric Cray for the Rio Olympics and raised a lot of money for him to help him train. And he made it to the semifinals, as we know, in Rio and in the 400-meter hurdles. And when EJ got hurt, that's when we got close. Again, he was then also had his funding cut and nobody knew if he would make it back. And in fact, no athlete of his caliber has come back from a full ACL tear like he did in 2017, right before the SEA Games. He was practicing before getting on the plane, and that's when he tore his knee. And we met, and I said, look, you can come all the way back. I'll help you. My wife will help you. She's a yoga instructor as well as a certified sports nutritionist. And we'll make you stronger than you ever were. And so I trained EJ for a good year plus, and then he came back. And we've been good friends ever since. I don't really have a role to play. I don't have an official role. My wife is officially his nutritionist and is part of his team, and has apparently there's even funding from the PSC, but we've never declared, she's never claimed a single centavo. We serve the country, we serve the athletes, we serve PATAFA. We don't want them, we've never taken money. We don't want money. We just wanted to help the country, because I firmly believe one thing, that sports is a way to build a nation. And I believe in the Filipino nation. I believe in the Philippine athlete. And I believe that we can use sports victories to build national pride, national dignity. And that's a role I can help them play. So that's where it comes in. I've become like a big Tito Jim to EJ. I'm not like a father figure. He has wonderful family and parents. I'm basically like an uncle that gives him some advice. He comes here for vacation. We talk about dating and girls, and this 25-year-old guy's talking about, and his future, and should he go back to school? We just chat, and I'm there to help him. And, I'll send him money if he needs money, if he's struggling between, getting things liquidated, and that I've sent him money many times, and that's okay. And he's, I love the kid. And I tell anybody that will, and all my people that have met EJ, we all say the same thing. He's a number 5 or number 6 pole vaulter in the world. But better than that, he's an even better human being. He's a great athlete, but he's a better human being. He's a hugely wonderful young man. And, he represents the best of the Philippines.
Wow. Thank you for all the help you've been giving all our athletes, Jim. I mean, I've been hearing about you for the longest time over the years. I remember that time when EJ got injured before the SEA Games in Malaysia, and he was devastated that he was unable to participate. Now, going to the issue at hand, can you tell us when was the first time that EJ started to talk to you about this problem that he is having with the PATAFA regarding the liquidation of the funds that have been sent to him?
It's been some time. I mean, it has caused obviously strains in my relationship with Popoy, because there's been massive strain. It has nothing to do with liquidations, and this has nothing to do with liquidations. This is about people getting upset. This is about face. This is about things that have nothing to do with what's being talked about. I have made the consistent statement, and the last statement I've ever made to Popoy Wico was the following sentence. I said, you have to ask yourself the question, does PATAFA exist to help athletes, or does it exist to serve its management? And honestly, I don't know the answer to that. I know what the answer should be, which is to serve, but I don't know if that's necessarily what its goals and objectives are. Popoy's been upset with EJ for many, many, many things. He's been upset with him because he did sponsorship deals on his own. And my explanation was, Popoy, he's 25, 26 years old. He's a grown man. He can vote. He can fight in the army. He can get married. He can have children. He's allowed to make his own financial choices. And he made a choice that athletes all over the world make, which is, I'm going to manage my own finances privately. I don't want my federation involved in everything. When Usain Bolt cuts a deal with Nike, he doesn't tell the Jamaican Federation, I want you involved and I'm part of it. They have nothing to do with it. And, this is normal stuff. And so it created a lot of antagonism. There was huge antagonism between Popoy and EJ's psychologist in the US. And this is this wonderful woman, Cheryl Kasuga. She's a Filipina. She went to UP. Then she goes to the US and gets a PhD from Johns Hopkins. I mean, you talk about a superstar. It's just like, she's worked with some of the best athletes in the US. And what does she want? She wants to serve the Philippines. So I brought her in, and I paid her for her first year. I paid it out of my own pocket. Let's put her with EJ. And you know what? I even wrote a whole report to PATAFA. He started winning when he started working with her. She was the difference. And we brought her in after the ACL tear. I paid for probably a year of her, or 6 months to a year of her counseling at him. But there was a big problem. PATAFA kept asking her for a write-up report. And she said, I can't do that. I'm bound by, I'm under American law. I am bound by doctor-patient confidentiality. I cannot share with you the reports I have with my patients. And there was this huge rift. And it started this statement of, you've been out of the Philippines too long. You've lived in the U.S. too long, and you've lost your sense of, respect. I don't buy that at all. They've learned to be adults and to stand up for themselves. And that same statement has been made about EJ a lot, which is he's not the same kid anymore. And I said, no kidding. He left the country at 17 years old. He would bend over, yes, Po, yes, yes, Sir Po. We moved him to Italy. He learned a language. He learned how to live by himself. He learned how to cook he learned everything by himself. And then he learned how to compete against these very vicious competitors. I mean, these people in pole vault, like Renaud Lavillenie from France, these guys are vicious. It's vicious. And he has learned to fight back. He was not be kowtowed, and to win and to beat them. And you know what? He's not the same kid, but he's still a wonderful human being with great character, but he doesn't take any grief. And look how it paid out in the Olympics. They ripped him off on his third jump. They had the bar moving when they told him to vault. What did he do?
Right.
Worldwide audience. A worldwide audience. This young Filipino fights with the judges, argues, and wins. And they give him a fourth jump. I mean, the whole world was like, this kid is impressive. He argues with facts. He sticks up for himself. He doesn't kowtow. He doesn't bend over and say, I'm sorry. I give up. He fights. And so, you know what? On his rights to have sponsors, on his rights to make his own choices, he will do that. Now, if that upsets people, so be it. But you have to respect his ability to be an adult. And this has created massive, massive tensions where I have multiple times been in calls with PATAFA. And I say, guys, he's still the same great kid, but he's grown up. He's grown up. You have to live with that. And he doesn't mean disrespect. He even wrote a column in the Star. I helped him write it, where he thanked Pope Boy for all his support. Why did he do that? He tried to mend the fence. He tried to say, look, just because I don't let you control every part of my vaulting doesn't mean I don't respect you. Why have we let this thing go to this? So this thing started a long time ago. And there's been lots of statements made that we've heard of people saying EJ needs to be taught a lesson, things like that. And so this is a witch hunt. This whole thing's a witch hunt. You would never handle this the way it's been handled if you trusted and loved somebody. If I had a problem with someone in my family and I thought maybe there was a money question, I would ask them privately. I wouldn't fire off 2 legal letters full of accusations and then leak them to the press, so that you ruin the guy's reputation, you ruin any ability of him to even secure a sponsor in the future. You don't treat people you love like that. So when people say, well, we loved you and we support you, well, you don't love him. I mean, this is not how you treat people you love. You call them up, because the explanation for this whole thing would take me about 5 minutes in a court of law, and it would be thrown out. The whole thing would be thrown out after I talked for 5 minutes, because I've seen now the data. There's accountants working on it. It's crystal clear. They first accused him, you never paid Vitaly Petrov. You embezzled the money. When you say you have to return 85,000 euros, what's the implication? The implication is he kept the money. I mean, if you demand someone to return it, you're implying that they've kept it. We now have all the record. You know what? He didn't pay Petrov 85,000 euros. You know how much he paid? 87,700. He overpaid Petrov. Documented fact. He overpaid. Now, why did he overpay? It's a very simple explanation. Because EJ, money management, is not his forte. Vaulting 5 meters 90, he's good at that. But managing personal finances, he's not so good at it. I'm going to have to work on it with it. I'm going to help him on this. But you know what? Not a good personal management. But why is that a crime? I know people in my own company. I have 4,000 employees. I have MBAs that don't know how to manage their own personal budget. I don't go and abuse them and put them in the public domain and make them feel awful. We all have faults. We all have flaws. And one of EJ's flaws is he's a wonderful guy, but he can't manage his budget. So he ended up overpaying the coach. I mean, probably now he's not going to get it back. We'll just tell Vitaly, keep it, and we'll deduct it in the future. But he's overpaid. So that's gone. Now, a normal family would say, oh, okay, we were wrong. We're sorry. Let's hug and make up. No. That's not what's happening. Now they say, oh, no, now it's a new thing. It's new. We admit he paid, but now we think he paid late. Okay, so is being late a crime? Has EJ ever been late? Yes, he's been late. Number of times been late. I've looked again at all the transactions. But, here's the funny thing. We looked at some of the liquidations of EJ from the PSC to PATAFA. Who are they to talk about being late? How dare they talk about, people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw rocks. Be careful. This is like the pot calling the kettle black. There was a liquidation done with a PSC of it was a couple million pesos, it was 3 million pesos, and it was broken into tranches. And so they had it was approved in January of that year for the previous year. So it was only to give him the money, which was from a year before. So we're already late. The PSC approves it on January 6th in a board meeting. So it's a board resolution from the PSC. They then transfer the money to PATAFA. PATAFA made the first partial payment of $600,000 in May. 5 months later, they made the first payment. Do you know when they made the second payment? November of the following year. So it was 22 months after the board meeting of PSC, and they released the money, that EJ got the balance of the money. 22 months. And you're going to argue with EJ about being late? Really? Do you really want to bring this out in the open? If you look at when the costs were taken, when the meetings were held, when the money was dispersed, and when it finally got to EJ's pocket, you are talking months on everything. So how dare these people talk about him being late?
Jim, let me just ask you the process. So money comes from the PSC. They transfer the money to the PATAFA, and PATAFA sends it to EJ. Am I right? Is this a process?
It can vary. It's not always direct. There have been direct payments from the PSC to EJ, but they typically. I'm speaking here in generalities. To not make this too complicated. The vast majority of the payments go from PSC to PATAFA to EJ, and then EJ has to play paymaster and transfer money to a coach, to a physiotherapist, to a massage therapist, to the facility. He does nothing but transfer money. He's the paymaster, and there's let's say 5 or 6 or 7 people that he has to pay and distribute money to. Now, what's so funny is, this is what just gets me worked up. The people are trying to make things into an intrigue, and they say it's clear that the PATAFA didn't pay Coach Vitaly directly because money came from Manila, from Germany, and from Dubai. They're like making this intrigue, like EJ's a money laundering operation or something. This is so much BS. Put me on head to head with these people. Okay, I would relish the moment. First of all, it's very clear PATAFA doesn't pay anyone direct. They only pay EJ because they won't agree to pay the people direct. EJ keeps asking, pay my coaches direct. They say no. Pay the coach, please. I don't want to do all this administration. And EJ has lost 150,000 pesos. In what? Transfer fees. Because he keeps transferring money all the time. Let PATAFA do it, but they don't want to do it. So we all know PATAFA doesn't transfer the money to Patron. But what he does do is he gives it to EJ in pesos. Mm-hmm. Now, you want to know how ludicrous this whole thing is? Here's a system that's broken. If this was in a company, everybody would be fired because it's so messed up. They tell a guy, we're going to give you pesos, but all your bills are in euros. And so you go to your bank in Manila. You go to your bank in Manila and you say, I want to transfer out in euros. They say, no. We only do dollars. So if you want to do euros, you have to handle it on your own. So what does he do? He comes to me and my wife, and he says, please, could you help me? I'm going to pay you 1 million pesos. Will you give me the equivalent euros so I can pay Italy? I'm in Dubai. And I say, okay, I'll do that. So he wires me a bunch of pesos into one of my Philippine bank accounts. And I send him the equivalent in euros. And so, yes, there are multiple transfers from Dubai to Petrov. What's the issue? It was paid by PATAFA. They say these, they don't even ask any questions. They go into the press and they blubber this rubbish that it's not even true. It is from PATAFA. It's PATAFA to EJ, EJ to me to Petrov. Why? Because they won't even give him European currency. They give him pesos that he has to convert out. And they put all the burden on him. So that's the answer on the Dubai bank account. It's my bank account. And I did it. And I did it to help him out. What's the big deal? Why is that intrigue? Why is he on trial for asking someone to be an exchange bank for him?
Jim, I was speaking with Mr. Wico, and he told me this was a moral issue. The way I'm seeing it now, it appears to be a personal issue. But anyway, following his trend of reasoning in this being a moral issue, he's saying that EJ submitted liquidation documents that said that he had paid Petrov on certain dates. And Mr. Wico is saying that he could not have been paid on those certain dates because they found out later that Petrov was paid only on November 5th, November 7th, and November 9th. So they're saying he falsified his liquidation documents because he said he had paid Petrov on those dates when actually he paid Petrov only this month of November. Is there truth? Is there a basis to that?
Yeah, there is in a sense. But first of all, you've got a young man there's a lot of paperwork and a lot of confusion. Now, let's start with a story about it. When I tell you this story of a theoretical conversation between an athlete and their federation in the Philippines, all the athletes listening to this will start laughing. So the athlete says to the federation or to the PSC, they say, my coach needs to be paid. My coach needs to be paid. Please, can you pay them? They say back and they say, well, we need paperwork. We can't pay your coach without paperwork. So what you should do is pay your coach, get a receipt, submit the receipt, and we will reimburse you. And the athlete says, okay, that works, but there's one big problem. I don't have $20,000 to pay the coach.
Exactly.
How do you want me to pay the coach? And so then the response back is, get them to sign the receipt quickly, submit it to us, and then we will pay them very quickly. Now, that is very common practice. Has EJ ever done that? Yes, but let's talk about the moral issue. Okay, let's play the moral issue from it here. What has happened with that? Did EJ get any money out of it? Did he get any? No, he got nothing. Did anything happen that the Philippine government or the taxpayer was abused in any way with that procedure? No, nothing happened. All the money was accounted for and paid to the right place. Now, there's a problem with the order of the paperwork. Now, the solution, there's two solutions. There's an immoral solution. The immoral solution is let's make EJ Obiena, the poster child of this horrible thing called having the documents in the wrong order, and let's hang him out to dry, and let's ruin his life for something that a vast majority of the athletes are doing right now. And we've asked them. Okay, I've asked them. I've got texts from leading athletes saying we all have to do that. That's how we have to do it. The other solution, which I have recommended 100 times, which any company does, is you give people what's called a float. You float them like $20,000 up front. You say, now you've got money now you start working. You use that money and then you file the reports, but you start with a float. Like when I have new employees join my company, I give them a $5,000 float. I don't tell them you have to go and fund all your own travel and then I'll reimburse you later. I give them a float. This is standard corporate practice. Now, what they do is they send a kid to Italy with no money. And then he's supposed to pay everybody before he can get the paperwork to get reimbursed. This is why for the past years, both Maristella and him, I have been fronting money all the time. because they don't have it to pay it to then get reimbursed. And because the reimbursement takes a year or 2 years, they're always out money. This system, these accountants, maybe they've never had like a Price Waterhouse involved in auditing this stuff. These guys are flabbergasted. I mean, it's almost like they're in a state of shock. They said this is so broken. The system is so broken. Now, what's making this a moral issue? I agree it's a moral issue. What's making this a moral issue is that people are picking on this to ruin him. And that is making a moral issue. And it makes it an immoral issue. An immoral.
Jim, the way things are going, there's talk that a lot more athletes are going to come forward to talk about their own particular situations with their NSAs. But setting that aside, just looking at EJ's particular case, he's a special athlete. And we know that he was once ranked number 5. He's now ranked number 6, still top 10 in the world. The only Asian ever to make it to the final of a pole vault event in the Olympics. How do we go about fixing this situation? If you're saying that PATAFA appears to have like a personal agenda to this, hanging him to dry in the open, how can we approach PATAFA to say, hey, look, this is a special athlete. There are a lot of personal issues going on here. How do we settle this? How do we resolve this? Can we get both PATAFA and EJ together and then have them mend fences if there are any fences to mend? What is the solution to all this? Because I've spoken with you earlier, Jim, and you told me in this particular quarrel, nobody wins.
No, nobody wins. I think the damage now is just actually beyond comprehension. I mean, it's really beyond me because it goes way beyond. First, you have the athletes are stirred up. The secondly is the Filipino people and what knock-on effects this has for PATAFA. Let me explain. When I came here to Dubai, I'm working for a major multinational fine hygienic holding, and we serve the Middle East. Now, in the Middle East, there is a large Filipino population, and I wanted to help Popoy and PATAFA. I want to help them. I have a huge love for the country. So I go to my team and I say, look, in Dubai, the largest population here is Filipino. We should do some Filipino activity. Let's sponsor PATAFA. And they say, okay. And so I became last year one of the top 3 or 4 largest sponsors of PATAFA, a company based in Dubai. So that's pretty impressive for PATAFA. They got money from a company in the Middle East, big money. Bigger money than most Filipino companies will give them. Now, we monitor social media. We monitor the Filipino activity. We pay this money to PATAFA. We do things online, social media. My people come to me yesterday and they say, we're monitoring the social media because we read social media trends. The trends on PATAFA are horrible. They're horrible. And they say, boss, we have to be blunt. We cannot recommend in good faith that we continue the sponsorship. And I had to look at the data and say, you know what, you're right. I have to spend the company. I'm the CEO of this company. I have to spend company money wisely. I can't continue. This is very, very negative on the brand because we're getting readings that 97% of social media output is anti-PATAFA and pro-EJ. What company can survive with a consumer business where you're upsetting 97% of the consumers? And you look at these other companies that sponsor PATAFA, I am sure these are respected names in the community. They are looking very hard on this. This is not good. This witch hunt is not good. How do you expect any company to support us? So there's going to be huge knock-on effects. And I think, the board of PATAFA, everyone, Popoy, they all have to look in the mirror on this and say, are we exercising good fiduciary management of this organization? Because right now, this is a disaster. This is a disaster. Read any posting on social media. Everyone is telling EJ, you know what the number one comment is? Leave the country and go vault for another country. That's the number one. Go read Twitter, go read Instagram, go read Facebook, go read any social media platform. the number one thing is you should leave and be another Wesley So. That's the comment. And nobody wants that. EJ doesn't want it. I don't want it. But, I mean, eventually you back someone in a corner. I mean, what do you expect?
It hurts to even have that on your mind. And Dyan, I'm sure you want to ask Jim about that situation. Other countries may want EJ to jump for them.
Of course they do. He is, I'll give you some simple facts. Did you know he's the fastest pole vaulter in the world?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, first, he's the fastest. The second, on a strength basis, there are probably a couple people like Piotr Lisek from Poland that are stronger, but EJ's strength is on another level. And then he's got his gymnastic skills. And then he has developed this very firm backbone. He's got a back of steel. You're putting this together, he is truly a once in a lifetime athlete. You're never going to get this with PATAFA again. I mean, not in our lifetime. They're not going to get this. All these Phil Am, bring it on. You're not going to get this. This guy is on another level. And why I've loved it so much is he's from Tondo. The system of go to America and find someone who's got some Filipino blood. When we were sitting at the 2015 SEA Games in Singapore, one of the Phil Am athletes comes up to us and says, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" And we say, "Yes." And he says, "What's the government in the Philippines? Do they have a king and queen?"
Mm-hmm.
And I get, and I sit there and I look and I say, here we have this guy wearing a Philippine uniform with a Philippine flag on it. He doesn't know anything about the country, and he can't say anything other than salamat. I mean, he only knows one word, and he wants to know if we have a king. And that's why I made my decision. I want to work with Filipino athletes and show the world that we can develop world-class talent from anywhere in the Philippines. So you take Maristella from Visayas, you take EJ, born in Tondo, went to UST, went to Ateneo for a year, then UST. These are pride and joys. The country built the number 5 vaulter in the world, 100% homegrown, no American schools, no American high schools, no, training in the US their whole life. And then they find out they're half Filipino. No, we should be embracing this. He's a national treasure, in my view. He's a national treasure. And this is homegrown. None of this passport. You see all of this today. All these athletes, they leave Kenya, they change their name, and they go run for a country in the Middle East. Mm-hmm. And, they may become another. Passport buying, he doesn't want to do it. I don't want him to do it. Nobody wants him to do it. But what are you going to do when you are being completely eviscerated by your own federation? Your own family is throwing you to the dogs. What do you want him to do? I mean, what's the end game that you want on this? Do you want him just to get down and just bow down and say, "I'm really sorry for everything, and I'm just going to be your slave"? You're never going to get that from EJ Obiena, because the very backbone that made him number 5 in the world, why would he give in on something when he's done nothing wrong? Why would he do that?
Jim, I wanted to go back to what you were saying earlier about being late in the payments. So what you're saying is that the so-called receipts that he issued, that PATAFA has said that he issued and said he paid Petro, were actually receipts of advance payments that you made for him so that he could show that he paid Petrov, and then they would reimburse him after.
That wasn't always the case. There were cases. It really had nothing to do with whether we paid or not. What I'll try to do is I can show you the payments because it's very interesting. Let me try to see if I can share with you.
Okay, we can see it now.
Okay,
these are all the payments to Vitaly. Okay, now PATAFA has said he made all the payments in 2021. That's not true. He made payments all the way back in 2019. That's not true. Now, I want you to look at something. Look at all these dates. November. Go back in 2020. November. What's the deal with November? You want to know what the deal with November is? That's his only month of break when he goes on half-day training where he can sit down and do paperwork. He has admittedly not paid Vitaly right when the money comes in. First of all, when the money comes in, he doesn't know what's for Vitaly and what's for rent. So he tends to pay whatever comes up. And you know what? Vitaly gets the short end of the stick. Because you know why? Because Vitaly loves this kid. And he loves him like a son. You know, let me show you. There's a picture that I took of them. This is a father and son. This is a father and son. So what does he do? It's like anybody. If you have a bank calling you saying pay the money and your father says pay me the money, you pay the bank first because you know your father will forgive you. But the bank won't. So you pay the bank. He's no different. So he pays these different bills. Now, what happens is he's traveling and all that money comes in. He doesn't even check his bank account very often. And he doesn't know when the money comes in. And a month passes before he checks his bank account. And then he sees it, but then he has to sit and do all the liquidations and all the paperwork. And so it takes a couple of months. It's only in November that he gets an actual break to do this. And so you go back to November of last year in 2020, he comes to me, Sir Jim, I've got time now. I need to pay Vitaly. I want to give him 20,000, 21,000 euros. Okay. But I need euros and I don't have it. Pesos, will you take it? So I do 2 tranches. He gives me I think 2 million pesos. If I remember right, it's like 2 million pesos for all this. He gives me the 2 million or the million plus pesos. I send euros to Vitaly. You come around this year, he does the same thing. He sends some of his money from his German bank account. Why are we so stressed about that? The kid lives in Italy. He lives in Germany. He lives in Europe. He needs a European-based account. So he has a German bank account. It's his account. What is the big deal? And then he pays a little bit coming out of Manila. And then again, he comes to me and I pay 12,000 as a peso to euro conversion to help him out. All of this, by the way, is done just normally and was done 2 weeks before he ever even knew about this or got a letter from PATAFA. The first letter was November 15. So this was just normal practice. He didn't do this to react to PATAFA. He was just doing normal behavior. He called me up. He said, it's November. I got light training. We're getting ready to start up December 1, heavy training. I got time. I need to pay Vitaly. And
so Jim, I wanted to clarify one point. So all the transmission of the money from PATAFA was sent to his Philippine account, PSC, PATAFA, EJ Philippine account. Am I correct?
Yeah, I think one before the Olympics, if I remember, there was one payment in euros sent of like 4,000 euros to help him rent cars to get to the Olympics. So let's say over the past, it's been 3 years that we're talking about here, 2018 to 2021. There was 90-something% of the money was sent in pesos to a Manila bank. Yes.
I see. Okay, so that's why he would ask you for help to help him pay out in euros. Because I was wondering about that. Okay, so have you spoken to Popoy since Mr. Huico, since they sent that first letter on November 15th, since this whole issue blew up?
We had a very tough, look, I have no joy in this because I have loved that and admired that man greatly and stood up for him many, many times. Okay. And in public domains, I wrote, you can go and search the Star. You'll see a column I wrote on the greatness of Popoy Huico. It's in my files. I have stood up for him. I've defended him. The relationship has deteriorated because of this situation with EJ. And the last exchange we had was probably 6 weeks to 2 months ago. And it was not pleasant for either of us. And I acknowledged back to him. I said, I know you have given a lot and we all appreciate it. And he wrote back and he said, thank you. And that was it. I have not talked to him. I reached out to other PATAFA board members in the past couple of days. And I said, please end this and get the people together. And the response I got was, I'm going to try, but this is above my pay grade. And people are pretty hell-bent on seeing this through. I mean, this is a witch hunt. Why do we want to prosecute him so bad? And all of this intrigue of Manila banks and Dubai banks and German banks, all you had to do was ask him. This takes like 2 minutes to explain. There's nothing nefarious or messy about having a Dubai bank involved. It's still the PATAFA money, but it had to be converted into European currency. That's all. And
So
I admit, and I'm on the record, the Dubai transactions that are mysteriously being referred to in the press and being written about in the press are my bank accounts. What's the big deal? There's no big deal.
And in all your conversations with EJ, he's never mentioned that Vitaly was demanding payment. That like, why is my payment late or whatever?
And no. Now, okay, I think Vitaly notices and he's up and he knows it's coming late, but I think he has already way moved past that. He always ends up getting paid. It's just not on the timing that he would like. He's not had an issue with that. He loves his kid. EJ is his prized student by a wide margin. And Vitaly's in the twilight of his career. Yeah, I mean he's in his late 70s, and he's got contracts with Brazil, with China, with other countries. The Philippines was really to serve this one individual, and yeah, I think he'd like to get paid and stuff, but he never called and set up all this stuff. He's never signed an affidavit, and that's why EJ keeps saying, "Produce the affidavit." You keep that, they made big mistakes here. They wrote letters to EJ and they say, we have a signed affidavit from Vitaly Petrov. Petrov is signing an affidavit now saying there is no such thing. Mm-hmm. And we all saw him go on, the press conference with EJ and support EJ. So that's not true. I mean, we should be at least being factual and not, trying to construe stories and make stories for people. That's not the right approach that we should do.
Jim, Mr. Wico came up with a sworn statement coming from Sergey Bubka saying that there was a 3-way conference call involving Bubka, Popoy Wico, and Vitaly Petrov. And in that conversation, they talked about Petrov not being paid. How much importance are we going to give this supposed document, of which we have a copy? How much importance does this document have in trying to resolve this situation?
Well, I mean, look, EJ adores, certainly if you're a pole vaulter, you put Sergey Bubka on a pedestal, and he puts Bubka on a pedestal. He met him once, and Bubka was part of this whole program to sponsor. It was really started by Goteng Kok. We should give Goteng Kok credit. He reached out to Bubka and he arranged that EJ get the initial scholarship. It was done by Goteng Kok. It was before Popoy Wico took over PATAFA. Now, he obviously looks up to Bubka, and he doesn't quite understand why Bubka's involved. Why is the president of the Ukraine Federation involved in this thing? I mean, what do they have to do with it? Should we involve the president of the Taipei Taiwan Association? I mean, why are we doing this? And now he doesn't know the facts. He doesn't know the details. I think the statement is obviously real. Now, my understanding is that, like, right now or today or tomorrow, Bubka is issuing a new statement to the Philippine authorities on that. And I don't know what's in that statement, but he's already told Vitaly, I'm tired of this. And he is issuing another statement. And I don't think that statement is going to say anything worse. I think it's going to basically be saying a lot of things have changed and, this is not valid anymore. I mean, who knows? I don't really know. I shouldn't speculate. But apparently Bubka is making a statement here in the next day or so. And that's what's been communicated to his coach, his old coach, Vitaly Petrov. So we'll have to see how this all plays out, because there is that letter. There's that thing. But, I think it would be very interesting to, we've EJ and I, it would be interesting to see how this whole thing played out with Bubka, and who called who and how did all this start? Because I find it a little bit hard to believe that the president of the Ukraine Federation made his own decision on his own to go to a notary public and have a document notarized, a sworn statement on his own. And why would he even want to get involved in this? You know, the guy is trying to run for a major office of World Athletics. Why is he throwing himself into a Philippine dispute? You know, there's more to this story, I suspect, than what we've heard so far.
Well, Jim, a close friend of mine told me that Popoy Wico, being president of PATAFA, should take the stance of a father reaching out to his son rather than someone who's like a boss talking to a subservient employee. What do you think of that analogy?
I think it's a very nice analogy, and I would have, under the Popoy Wico that I knew, I would have thought he would have done that, because I think he's a good man. And I think he, you know, look, when EJ was injured, this is true fact. When he was injured in the ACL, who was in the hospital with him? I can tell you who was in the hospital with him. His mother and father, who are incredible, wonderful people, me and my wife, and Popoy Wico. There was no everybody else that loves EJ. They weren't there. He was already written off. You know, so I would have expected that. I just do not understand. I can understand a little bit. You know, I feel that he's grown up and he's changed and all that, but you don't become vindictive. That's the whole thing. That's, you know, and why have I even entered that? I mean, of course, I have great passion and great affection for EJ, but why am I diving into this? I got to, you know, I have a job to do, and I have to clear this with my management team, and I have to talk this stuff. Why am I getting involved? You know why? Because I can't stand to see a 25-year-old kid ruined. Why would we do that to a young kid? You know, I'm an old guy. I'm going 60. You know, Popoy is significantly senior to me. He's in his 70s. Why are we doing this to a young person? Why? You don't do this. And this is not a legacy that you want. You know, this is going to ride forever with the people involved in it that are doing this. You're going to live with this forever. And, you know, and this is not the legacy that you want, that you know, in your later time in your life, you became angry and vicious and, you know, and lashing out and being vindictive. This is not the thing. And the Popoy Wico that I knew and I worked with was an incredibly smart, dynamic, caring individual. And, you know, I couldn't have envisioned a better leader for PATAFA at the time in 2014 than Popoy Wico. I threw all my support behind him. And now that doesn't mean much because I wasn't on the board, or I've never had any official really role. I mean, Goteng Kok made me a coach, but, you know, okay, fine. I was working for free. You know, it's not, I've never had like big thing, but I would tell people, I told like the Ayalas and the Ayala family, when they were looking at it years ago, I stood up in a meeting and I said, this is the guy you want to put, I trust him. I would trust my life with him. You put money with him. You know, you don't have to worry about stuff. What's happened recently is very concerning. It's highly concerning, and I don't understand it. And I don't understand in a federation that is very lean on world-class talent. I'm sorry. I love the athletes. I love everything. But, you know, you look at world-class talent, they've got, honestly, you know, you only have one person qualify for the Olympics officially. I mean, the second entry in the Olympics was universality.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, there was no qualifying time run. So, you know, I mean, you know, you're talking, and that was a very predictable outcome. You put someone into a race that hasn't run the time. I mean, they weren't going to go more than the first round. That was you know, that was obvious. You know, EJ is their only internationally calibered athlete right now. Mm-hmm. Why are you destroying that one unless you don't really care about it? Because PATAFA is there not for the athletes, but to serve other people. Now, if that's the case, then all this makes sense, which is it's not about whether we win or anything or not. We don't really care. What we care about is using this position of authority. And it reminds me of coming back from one of the Olympic Games. I come back to Manila from the Olympic Games, and I get on this flight that's full of people from the Olympics. And I go back to sit in economy on this long flight. And all the athletes, you know, there's like a couple of athletes that get on the plane. They're carrying their bags and stuff. And you can tell, you know, they're athletes. They carry their bags. They go back into economy. And then this massive delegation of people in their 40s and 50s and 60s gets on wearing, you know, team whatever. and they get on the plane, and they all sit in business class and first class. So the athletes are all in the back of the plane, squashed, and the ratio is like 5 officials to each athlete. And all the officials are sitting in business class and first class, laughing and having drinks and having things served to them. And I just shake my head and I say, this whole thing is messed up. The money isn't going to the athlete. The support, the first federation that really goes and says, we're here to serve the athletes because of the Filipino talent. They're going to win so many medals. It's incredible. If PATAFA really adopted, let's serve the athletes and let's serve them. And our whole mission is serve. Because when EJ asks, as an example, he says, please, can you pay the coach? He gets yelled at. Like, the people in the office, they have enough to do. They're not there. They're not your personal assistants. They're not there to do that. They do enough for you. He gets like berated for asking for that simple service. But you go to the Olympic Training Center and you talk to like the other athletes, and they say, oh, my federation assigns me an assistant to do all my paperwork. I don't have to worry about that. They all feel bad for EJ. They all feel like it's incredible. That sometimes at that village, at that training center in Italy, the PATAFA is like the talk at dinner. They like this whole thing's amazing. I mean, now with this going on, it's even more amazing. They say it's crazy. Doesn't the federation? They'll say, doesn't your federation want you to win? Don't they want you to win? I mean, what's wrong? If you want the guy to win, what you say to him is, you say, how can I make your life easier? Not yell at him, because like EJ will be in training and his phone will ring. Now, he's very clear with people. I go to bed at 9:00 at night. Don't call me after 9. And you can read on Google what time it is in Italy. Just Google, what time is it in Rome? And you'll know. And I'm in training twice a day from these hours. Now, I can always be reached at these 2 time periods, but don't call me outside of it. So he's in training, and the phone rings, and it's PATAFA. And what does Vitaly say to him? He says, don't you dare pick that phone up. Don't pick it up. I'm sick of this. And he doesn't pick it up. What does he get? A nasty WhatsApp. You should not ignore your federation. You should not, on and on. He gets berated. He's been called at 3:00 in the morning. Now, if you're called at 3:00 in the morning, which is 8:00 in the morning in Manila, or 9, depending upon the time of year, the person calling you, there's only 2 explanations. One, they don't have a lot of intellectual capacity to understand time zone. So that's one explanation is, I just don't know how to do it. I don't know how to figure out the time in another part of the world. I don't know how to subtract 6 hours from my current position and recalculate the time. That's one explanation. Okay. The second explanation is, I don't give a damn about him. I am the king here, and you're going to answer the phone when I call you, and I'm going to call you when it's convenient for me. I don't care about you. I care about me. And this is where I think you've got the whole thing's gone off the rails. We have lost perspective, and you see this in companies. You know how you see this in companies? I go into, I go to this one airline. I try to go to their lounge. I've got my 8-year-old son with me. I say, can we go in the lounge for a few minutes? Now, I'm a member and he's not. The person says to me, no, you can go in, but your son has to sit outside. And I said, are you serious? You're going to make an 8-year-old sit outside? How many dirty old croissants do you think he's going to eat? And they treat me like a criminal because I'm trying to take an 8-year-old into a lounge. So we walk away, and I decide I'm never going to fly that airline again. They lost track of the customer. They treat the customer like the enemy. Like, you are trying to steal our croissants. We will not let you in the lounge because we have these amazing, they're not that amazing croissants. They're in a plastic bag. They're dry. They're no good. I mean, you couldn't sell that croissant on a street. Okay. But let me and my kid in. They wouldn't do it. And this is where I think PATAFA has gone. They don't serve the athlete. How can you call this serving the athlete? You have to know, you have to understand the role. It's very simple. If there are no athletes, there's no PATAFA. That's the principle. No athletes, no PATAFA.
So Jim, in all your conversations with EJ, what are you advising him now, and what resolution do you see to this situation? I mean, I'm sure he's unable to train because of all, having to deal with so many things. So how do you see this working out for him?
Well, the first thing is he feels very alone. And in these situations, you find out who's really got your back. And, a lot of people say, well, we're behind you, but they don't want to, nobody wants to take a risk. And he's been quite disappointed, I think, in a number of folks because there's a bit of abandonment. I've made sure that we've got his back. And, I talk to him every day now, and I make sure that we're there for him. And if the worst comes to worst, because, let's take an example. They haven't paid him any money since August. His funding's been stopped since August. He's out of money by mid-December.
Because I think the contract sort of ended end of August. That's why they were asking him for like a budget, right?
Now
Paris.
They had cut the funding. There's a budget from Paris that's been submitted. Apparently it was approved. And then obviously this whole thing is frozen and everything. So he's never gotten anything since August. Now, he runs out of money in like 2 weeks. What I have told him, and we're working on some funding for him. I've told him, look, I'll get you on a plane here. He comes here. He was here a month ago. We'll take you here. You are not going to be on the street. I got your back. I'm not going to let him suffer. And, this whole like starve him and see what happens. But, he's had some money and he's gotten some donations and he's trying to hold on for now. But we need resolution pretty quick. Now, it is no surprise to anyone that way before this, a number of countries have approached him to change citizenship. He is the most honorable young man you can ever meet. You know what he says? And he and I talked it all. I know all the countries that have talked to him. I'm the only one who knows. Okay. And I said, don't abandon your country. Be loyal. You love your country. And he said, I love my country. I don't want to vote for anybody else. So he told all these countries who dangled guaranteed money in front of him. I mean, you want to talk? I mean, this is why it's so upsetting. They're making him like he's a thief. He could make triple of what he's making now if he had taken a deal a year and a half ago. He's already
these offers been coming even years ago.
Way back when he vaulted 581, the door started getting knocked. They started knocking on the door. He had a major nation, a major country come to him and say, we want you to vault for us. They put the financial proposal on the table. They put everything. And he said, no, I stay loyal. He walked away from much more money and he was guaranteed for life. I mean, look at these people like Antonio Villanueva who die impoverished with an Olympic medal, the boxer.
Yeah.
I mean, a horrible story. I mean, I remember Jolly Gomez telling me and asking me to give him some money to send for the funeral. I mean, this is just, these are awful stories. We don't take care of our athletes in retirement. When they're retired or done, they're starving. And so here you have a country telling him you will earn a pension the rest of your life paid by our government. He said no out of love for his nation. That should be applauded, not attacked. Now, since this thing happened, because now the whole track and field world knows this is in the news in Europe, everyone's talking about it and everyone's laughing about it and saying, this is great. I mean, the Philippines is basically throwing him out to everyone else. We can go get this guy. Countries have gone to Italy to see him in the past 2 weeks.
Wow.
And they go and they see him and meet with him and say, here's the deal. And what have I said? Don't do anything. Let's try to work this out. We want to work it out. But what does work it out mean? Okay, if everybody's too proud to say they were sorry and they shouldn't have done this, I'm really sorry about that. But you know what? You got to clear this young man's name. He's 26 years old. He's got 60 years of life ahead of him, if not more. He doesn't have to live with this for 60 years. And that's not fair. That's not fair. So let's first admit we were wrong. He didn't embezzle anything. He didn't take anything. What he is guilty of is being a bad bookkeeper and being lackadaisical. And I have yelled at him. My wife tore him up today and said, EJ, how can you not have done this in a better way? And he's like, I'm so sorry. I'm sorry. I did mess it up. But that's the slap on the wrist you give him. You don't rip him apart in the press and leak stuff. Then step 2 is the payment must go directly to the coaches from now on. Stop asking these guys to manage a payroll. Make it easy for our athletes. Give them a float, pay the coaches in advance, pay in the right currency, convert the currency with the Central Bank of the Philippines, okay, and get it done right. And then thirdly, you're going to have to mend that fence. Now, that fence is burned pretty good on both sides. And it doesn't seem like really either side, if you take like the PSC moratorium, I don't know if anybody has even agreed to the moratorium totally. EJ's doing it out of honor and he's staying off the press. But every day there's an interview with Popoy or somebody from PATAFA. They're not honoring the moratorium. I mean, this is almost like it's like a war. Let's be at war. How are you going to resolve that? I don't know. I think that honestly, the POC has to get deeply involved in this, and that the POC will have to maybe take over the management of EJ. If they want him to vault for the Philippines, they'll have to take it over, and they'll have to work some kind of special arrangement where the federation, plays a different kind of role. Maybe that's the solution, on the whole thing. But I think, because it's very hard for PATAFA to argue that their investigative team is impartial. I mean, spare me. They were all appointed by Popoy. I mean, that's called, executioner, judge, and jury all in one thing. Okay, let's be realistic about this. I think that this is why EJ filed a complaint with the IOC, with the Philippine Olympic Committee. There's still a legal card on the table of defamation of character and slander. That's certainly being reviewed by lawyers now. And, we want to de-escalate this thing. Okay. If we didn't want to de-escalate, we'd already filed a legal case, because we have a legal case. It's locked tight. Okay. It's a locked tight case. So we can file that, but we've all told him, the lawyers, he's got a whole battery of lawyers in Manila, and they've said, don't make these steps yet. I still want them to make up. I honestly do, because you know what? I care about EJ Obiena, and I've always had a lot of passion for Popoy. This is not pleasant. I get no joy out of this and fighting with a friend. This is a guy, when he was in the hospital, I went and visited him. When his mother died, I went to the funeral. When he had events in his private life with his kids and grandkids, I would sometimes be there. I care about this guy. And I care enormously. And this doesn't give me any joy. But I don't want to see a young man ruined. And I have to put the country above an individual. And I have to put PATAFA above an individual. And I have to put a young person with their whole life in front of them high on the priority list, because EJ has to live with this the rest of his life. And he's got a lot of life to live. And he can do so much for this country and so much of a role model. And, why are we doing this to him? We don't have enough role models like him. And this is a sad thing.
Jim, thanks very much for your insights. We certainly learned a lot from you, especially on a very personal basis, because a lot of the words that came out of your mouth actually came from the heart. And we want to thank you for that, because we know that you've had a long and very positive relationship with Popoy Wico, as well as with EJ. So you're a guy who's in the middle. You're a guy who's been able to see both sides. And I think your examples of how to resolve the situation are all very constructive and positive. So I want to thank you personally, Jim, for your thoughts and your presence in our show. And Dyan?
Thank you for caring so much, Jim, and for putting so much time to this. I know you have a workload there, but as you know, you're making we can see your heart for the Philippine athlete, and we hope to have you back in the Philippines.
I would. That's where I would like to spend my retirement days and come back and help, because it is truly the great country on this planet, and it's home for me, and my passion is for the people, for the talent is enormous.
Yeah, Quinito and I watched EJ at the Tokyo Olympics. We were right there in the stadium. We saw that whole episode happen, and we also talked to him after. He was, as you know, very disappointed, and we're glad he decided to continue on till 2024. So Quinito and I, just like you, hope that this will be resolved and it will lead to just better jumping for him, and putting the Philippines in the map in pole vaulting. I mean, this is historical for a Filipino to achieve what he has already at this point in the sport of pole vaulting. Right? Not many Filipinos even know what pole vaulting is until EJ Obiena did all the things he did.
You're right. And he has truly done an amazing job. What a story. From the injury, from the things he's come back from. This is the greatness of the country coming out in this kid. Resilience that very few people would have.
Thank you again, Jim. Thank you, Jim. And we'll see you. We'll see you soon.
Take care. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
Wow, so Quinito, like, what a guy, Jim Lafferty. I've known him to be someone who has helped Filipino athletes, but I didn't know he helped this much. So, I mean, a ton of thanks for caring and believing in all our athletes, from Maristela, and of course EJ now helping him through this and giving him such sound advice. So, well, he said so much. It answered a lot of questions about, the reimbursements that were made and why EJ paid only in November, that Bubka will be making a statement soon. And, his resolutions to this situation, to me, are very sound. One in particular, which I totally agree with, is that payments to the coach of EJ be made directly, because of the system, apparently, of the funds being deposited to his Philippine account, makes it quite a tedious process of having him transferring it to Jim's account so that Jim could use his Euro account in Dubai and transfer to Italy and all that. So that's a lot of thing. That's a whole lot for an athlete to think about. So I agree with him there that would greatly help the performance of EJ Obiena. And I just really, I'm touched by, how much he loves the country, and especially when he said that countries up to 2 weeks ago were visiting EJ and offering him to jump for them. To me, that's like heartbreaking. And I want to thank Jim for, continuing to advise EJ to hold on and to wait till this situation is resolved.
Well, very enlightening. A lot of the things that Jim told us we'd never heard before, especially what you mentioned about the countries going to see him in Italy, presenting a financial package that will set him up for life, and that he turned his back on those countries. And that's amazing. But I only wish the best, not just for EJ, but for Philippine sports in general, for PATAFA, for Mr. Wico. I think it's important that in terms of perspective, that we remember what Jim said, that the federation exists for the athletes, not for anyone else, and that the federation should make life easier for the athletes to compete and not burden them with the duties of being a paymaster or being a liquidator. It's enough that the athlete has to sacrifice hours of practice time to be able to compete the best he can be or she can be for our country. And with that, Dyan, I think it was certainly an eye-opening episode once again. And we're just very happy that here at Play It Right, we were able to present to you, the sports fans, exactly the facts of the issue, things that you want to know about athletes, things you want to know about the stories behind what you read in media. And as Dyan and I will always say, we're always here to play it right. This is Quinito.
Play it right. I'm Dyan Castillejo. Join us again on our next episode of Play It Right.
Play it right.